So, for many years now, the beginner's guide has haunted me. Articulating why is tricky. As a kid, I was going through it, and I think that the game granted me an outlet that helped me work through my own stuff. When I was a kid, I remember watching the beginner's guide, and it felt kind of cathartic. Like, I would cry. And I remember relating to Davey, who felt like something was wrong with him. Like Davey, a lot of my identity was tied up in the media that I consumed, and like art and projects that I kind of aligned myself with. And really, like, I did that because I was empty inside. Like, there wasn't much else going on. And I think that's why I kind of had this very profound response to the video game, and like why it's kind of been bouncing around my head for like years, because I related to Davey and I understood his sadness. I'm older now and I'm out of that phase, and like honestly, I'm arguably the best I've ever been, and I kind of want to look back at this game and just kind of close it. Like, I have spent so long chewing on this game, trying to figure out what it means and stuff. I'm approaching this project like a way to finally be like, okay, I understand you now, and I can let you go. And that's what happened. So I am pleased to present my essay on the Beginner's Guide to you. The Beginner's Guide is a very powerful narrative, and part of that power actually comes from the relationship that we, as the player, have with Davey, our narrator. We rely on him, we trust him, we take his word at face value. He is the only constant in the entire game. Everything changes, but he's with us the entire way through. And that's what makes it so debilitating when you make it to the tower phase of the game and realize that Davey is not what he seems. So as a player, it takes time to realize the severity of what Davey's done. And if we return to the very start, we can actually identify that, like, hey, there are some elements here that indicate not all is as it seems. As a player, it takes us until the very end of the game to really register what Davey is doing, and when we do have that realization, we feel quite gross. Like, we just didn't know. We had no clue that through playing this game, we would kind of contribute to violating a creative person's boundaries. And I think it's really interesting to go back to the beginning of the game and just examine, like, were there any indications that not all was as it seems? The answer is yes, by the way. Davey turned us into a willing accomplice, but, like, how did he do that? I would argue that the very first thing Davey does is lie to us. We don't know he's lying, but by the time we make it to the end of the game, it's clear that we have been misled. Coda isn't his friend. Coda was not retreating inward. Coda was icing out an opportunistic fan that used him, in his own words, to feel important. When Davey is forced to confront reality, when the jig is up, he goes so far as to say he does not know this person. He never knew this person. And a very, very thorough examination of the things that Davey says throughout the game show that very early on, he was strategic about what he told us and when. And, like, did he know that? I don't know. There's a lot of intuitive stuff that goes on in the act of creation, and I'm sure that Davey Wreden had, like, this kind of intuitive approach where he just kind of knew what he wanted to do. But, like, as someone examining this with a critical eye, he consistently used language that centered himself and othered Coda. He talks about Coda like he's this foreigner that is endowed with, like, profound knowledge that only Davey can pass along to you. He says phrases like, what Coda probably intended, and this is an important moment for him. He speaks like he's orchestrating a study and walking you through the behavior of participants, like a tour guide walking us through a museum, or someone recapping a long-defunct attraction. That's not all, though, because he ascribes behavior to Coda, too, and he projects his views and interpretations onto Coda throughout the entire game. In addition to this, he also, like, praises Coda and puts him on a pedestal, but actively describes his games in a way that I would consider underhanded. Think words like weird, experimental, bizarre, abstract. And then he even gets really hung up on the idea that like a video game needs to have a clear purpose. At one point, Davey even mentions they having like a heated exchange, a heated argument, but conveniently, he does not present Coda's thoughts on if a game should be playable or not. Like, hey, it's really interesting to think about what the absence of information indicates. The absence of information gives Davey more power, and we in turn feel worse when we realize what the truth of the situation is. And I think it's really interesting to kind of identify what Davey thinks a real game is. He never explicitly states it, but there are so many lines in the story that give us an idea of like what he thinks a game should be. I determined that the qualities that Davey would consider a game are like a fast turnaround time, some type of semi-instant gratification, a very clear understanding of what's going on. He has this expectation that an artist holds on to their creation even after the creation is complete. He thinks that you should be able to get through a game. Does it mean anything if anyone cannot get through a game? It's really interesting to think about that in the context of him constantly changing games to get through them. Like, hey, there was a way to get through the game, you just chose to not do that. Anyway, in addition to this, he also kind of communicates this idea that a game should not be weird for weirdness sake. There should be like meaning, and then he also feels like they should be playable. For example, like when he bypasses the amount of waiting time you're supposed to have programmed into the game. Or when he like digs through the code and like makes a door open even though it's not supposed to open. I think that if we like look at these things that he prioritizes and values, we see that they not only reflect who Davey is, but what he prioritizes in life. He wants a game that rewards him without much effort. He believes that the art and the artist are not separate. He values the idea of something being cohesive over like attributes that are like weird, and he wants meaning, but ultimately I would argue that he is a superficial person and uses Coda to get attention. The way that he talks about like the start of the relationship is really interesting. He became friends with Coda because Coda was different. He had to be friends with him. He describes it as a seductive idea to learn about a creator through the creation that they make rather than messy in-person socializing. Ultimately, this is what leads to the end of their relationship, whatever it was, because Coda realizes that Davey has co-opted his authenticity, Coda's authenticity, and Coda's creative projects in the pursuit of validation. Davey is drawn to Coda because he was struggling and found meaning in Coda's work. Then Coda drew away from him because once Coda started struggling, he adopted this almost like hero mentality. In Davey's mind, if he fed Coda enough external validation, then he would like bounce back. Their dynamic would return to square one, and then they would like be bonded closer by the struggle of being artists. But he was incorrect. He was wrong because Coda, unlike him, is not driven by validation. Coda is an artist. When he shared his art, he did it in his own way with intention on purpose. If we look objectively at the timeline, Coda made games because he wanted to make games. We don't have any meaningful evidence about why or any deeper meaning, and that's fine, because Coda can just make games if he likes making games. He does not have to build his entire identity around like being a game designer. Coda's games had meaning even if they felt absurd or incomplete. He created for the sake of creating and had highs and lows. And during those highs and lows, he realized Davey was less concerned about him and more concerned about using him for achieving a sense of importance that he didn't earn himself. And I'll be real, I have been both of these people in my life. And honestly, I still do have this desire to be like seen as important because of what I create. Ever since I was young, I wanted to be popular online because of what I made and the treats that I could create and dangle in front of people to get their attention and keep them close. And living like that is awful. It is so horrible because knowing that the only reason people speak with you because of what you create kind of reinforces this idea that there is nothing else worth staying for. And that is lonely. That is alienating. And that may be why Coda started pulling away from Davey. It took me a really long time to realize that normal people run the world. Think about how many people are remembered in the grand scheme of things. Most of us are going to get forgotten. We matter because we exist, not because of what we create. Someone put together the code that lets me type, and someone put together the app that I'm typing in, and someone plucked the food that I eat from the ground and designed the headphones that I use. Someone made the sunscreen that I put on every day, and someone you have never met runs the McDonald's you go to when you're at your lowest. The man who gave me my nachos from Taco Bell with a smile after seeing that I had been crying, he doesn't know what that meant to me. Am I ever gonna see him again? No. But I remember him because he was kind to me when I was alone. When you prioritize being important, you lose sight of how everyone and everything is important, even if no one is looking or validating constantly. People don't have to look at you for you to matter and be important. When clout and validation are all that matter, who are you alone? Are you happy? Can you still lead your life in a way that makes you feel complete? You're gonna get hurt no matter what you do, but if you forego the chase, you can rest. There is nothing wrong with resting. Davey repeatedly characterizes Coda's work as unorthodox, weird, or having no point. I argue that while there is a specific definition to what a game is, I think that actively trying to weed out what is or is not a game does more harm than good. It creates conflict that doesn't need to exist, and I think it just discredits work that is nuanced in nature. I compare it to the idea of, did you really read the book if you only accessed it through Audible? Like, you know what happens. You experienced it. Does that matter? Is that experience worth less than a real book? By pure chance, when I was looking up Coda's notes, I discovered that it's possible to beat the invisible maze at the end. Coda and Davey posted a video in 2015 showing that it is totally possible. If you successfully beat the maze, you are rewarded with one word. Damn. Although this moment is something that most people are never ever going to experience, I think that it serves as a flashpoint for the entire narrative. Liam ECM595 commented, I read the damn a lot differently. I think it's Davey realizing that he could have engaged with Coda's design, and that there may have been a point to the slow stairs, never-ending house, etc. Davey perverts the nature of Coda's art. Coda creates the tower as a final test. If Davey never cheated on the tower, he probably would have been spared the ending. I love this comment. I think that is a succinct and astute take that covers the game from beginning to end. The whole narrative revolves around Davey changing the games, and the whole point of the games that Coda makes is for us to experience what it's like to occupy the in-between. That's my interpretation, at least. We always think of point B and point A, but what about the in-between? Usually, it's considered uncomfortable. Very rarely is it characterized in a positive way. I once heard the phrase that anything worth doing is boring and hard, and you get to decide what is worth doing. The more comfortable you are in the process of achieving or creating, the more rewarding life becomes overall. And interestingly enough, a commenter said, just turn on show triggers and you can finish the maze. To which Kukunin 2 replied, you can also beat it by going over it. The way Davey did. Truly such an incredible full circle moment where it's clear that the divide between Davey and Coda is more about how to approach life than anything else. You can get out quick, or you can do it without cheating. I love this game so much. If you made it this far, hi, I'm Mar, and I would love if you took a look-see at my channel, or dropped a comment, or left a like, or literally engaged in any way possible. Around here, I just talk about things that I'm passionate about. There's no like clear theme going on other than I have good taste and I like to talk a lot. So think Half His Age, Hades Town, The Beginner's Guide. These are the kind of things that I'm just kind of gravitating toward talking about and doing video essays on. I really like analysis. I've got a few song reviews on the channel where I basically just like do an analysis of like the way the lyrics are written and the depth of the that's the kind of person that I am. So if you're into that sort of stuff, take a look-see at my channel. I might have stuff for you that you might enjoy. And if you're a thinker like me, I hope that you feel comfortable enough to comment and share whatever is on your mind. I love yap, I love conversation, I love the exchange of information, I love learning from each other, I love different points of view. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, if you made it this far, if you have any thoughts at all, leave a comment, leave a like, go ahead and check out the rest of my channel. It's been great. Bye!